Hi, I'm Kathleen Jackson, and I am responding to the resiliency argument. While some do recover and build resiliency, I do not believe that everyone does. The 2 points that I would like to make is one, yes, resiliency can be learned, but not all have access to the help or the information. Two, there is brain damage with early and ongoing ACEs. First, the original ACEs knowledge came from data predominantly collected from white middle to upper middle class participants and focused on experiences within the home. Using a more socioeconomically and racially diverse urban population, this expanded ACEs to the community level. Dr. Filetti, in an article he wrote covering relationships of childhood abuse and household dysfunction leads to many of the causes of a death in adults. Adverse childhood experiences study. These ACEs were measured to help understand whether conventional ACEs alone can sufficiently measure adversity, especially among various subgroups. The expanded surveys exposed a 13.9% higher ACEs that would have gone undiagnosed within the conventional ACEs reports. These findings concluded repeated exposure to toxic stress without support can damage a child's brain and immune system, leading to increased mental, physical, and behavioral health issues later in life. This was further supported by a study called Childhood Trauma and the Effects Upon Genes. Skelton et al. In 2011 conducted research that suggested that childhood trauma, when serious and protracted enough, can actually adversely affect the genes that regulate basic body symptoms. Without adequate therapy, the impaired regulation may last well into adulthood or even a whole lifetime. This process by which how genes express themselves may be interfered with. While conventional and expanded ACEs conclude the same information that trauma can exacerbate health conditions even later in life, it further reveals that ACEs caused by socioeconomic stressors and the lack of appropriate support for the family cannot necessarily be overcome. The argument for resiliency mandates that there are programs, techniques, and that resources necessary to acquire them are available to all. They are not. The second point is that there can be permanent brain damage. This may get a bit sciencey, but I will try to be clear. In the studies of the brain, there are 3 neural network structures that we will look at: the cerebellum, the limbic system, and the cerebral cortex. Activity in these areas are directly influenced by ACEs. Within each of these are many substructures: the amygdala, the limbic system, and the prefrontal cortex and the cerebral cortex. Each of these has a distinct purpose. The cerebellum is your motor control. The limbic system is your reactionary part of the brain, your feelings, your emotions, your fight or flight, pleasure, reward, and pain. The cerebral cortex is the thinking part of our brains, including reasoning, judgment, motivation, perception, memory, and learning. The activities of these 3 areas of the brain are important to understand to know whether you are reacting or thinking. Dr. Hosier states in his article, damage to the brain development caused by trauma increases during developmental epochs, times of development. The first 10 years of life are the most formative for the limbic system. Why is that important? The limbic system is where key neural networks involved with coping with adverse childhood experiences and resulting toxic stresses are cued and mapped formed and filed. The brain pays close attention to reactions, feelings, etc. that are mapped in the limbic system because these are critical to survival. Dr. Linda Fredericks from PACES states if any one of these things is changed or different, it changes the way the neural networks perform, which then changes the person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and consequently, their body and physical responses. These mapped responses, learned behaviors, and adaptive or maladaptive coping mechanisms. After our very formative first 10 years, then comes puberty, around 12-ish. This is an instinctual wiring process. It is a season of turning to our peers and taking risks. These are very heavy limbic system years. Very emotional, very trying. Damage done in these early years creates the basis of our interpretations for doing life. Who we trust, how we learn, how we or if we will be able to self-regulate. The mental consequences from damage to the limbic system creates anxiety, depression, feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, difficulty concentrating, or a desperate need to be in control. Further studies are also showing a link between borderline personality disorders and narcissistic personality disorders, PTSDs. Brain scans can now reveal the damaged areas of the brain from trauma. These brain-damaged ways of interpreting life reveal how some are not able to recover from ACEs, depending on how much, how long the ACEs were active during their brain developmental years. In conclusion, data shows that early childhood trauma can have very lasting effects, even in the light of therapy and interventions. The level of damage to the brain will have to look at the variables that include the age of development the ACEs occurred, the duration of abuse, personality type, the family history or family genes, and the community the trauma victim was raised in, and when or if there is accessibility to help. Many of these factors have the propensity to be found in harsh conditions, like those who served as foreign missionaries, very rural or isolated areas, and very poor areas. Here is where you will find the higher rates of generational genes and brain-damaged coping skills. It is my summation that with this research and these determinants, that not everybody has the ability or the availability to heal.